In the bustling heart of a small township called Cambole, 17-year-old Tunde stood at the cracked bus stop, his school bag heavy on his back. The morning air was restless, buzzing with the life of the waking neighborhood. A soft gust stirred the red dust around his feet, and he shifted his weight nervously, sensing that today carried a strange energy, though he couldn't say why. Maybe it was the math exam looming ahead at Bamuso High School, or the weight of his evening shift at the grocery stall down by the open market. Tunde tugged tighter at the straps on his bag and released a tired sigh just as the battered city bus rattled into sight. As the bus hissed to a stop, a familiar shuffling of feet lined up at the curb. Tunde boarded, weaving past elders and young, mothers balancing bundles, searching for an empty spot. Most seats were taken, cluttered with woven baskets and school books. His sharp eyes caught a free seat midway down the aisle. Moving toward it, Tunde's gaze caught on a strange figure at the front, a middle-aged man dressed sharply in a dark indigo agbada suit, clinging awkwardly to the overhead rail. His polished leather briefcase swung dangerously close to scuffing his clean shoes with every jolt of the engine. It puzzled Tunde. A man dressed like he belonged in a boardroom, riding the battered public bus in the middle of Cambole? It stirred his curiosity. Slipping into his seat, he couldn't shake the sight of the stranger's struggle. The man's face was tense, gripping the rail for dear life. Tunde's chest tightened with the echo of his grandmother's words. Kindness will never make you poor. Without letting doubt take root, he stood up and offered his seat. His voice came out soft, almost swallowed by the engine's steady roar and the babble of passengers. Still, it reached the man, who turned sharply, his deep-set eyes widening in surprise. It was as if he hadn't heard someone speak kindly in years. For a moment the man hesitated, eyes searching Tunde's face, then stepped forward. Tunde moved aside, letting him settle into the seat. A soft "thank you" slipped from the man's lips. Tunde nodded, feeling heat rush to his cheeks as pride swelled quietly inside him. Gripping the overhead bar, Tunde braced himself as the bus lurched along the bumpy road. It was a small gesture, but it felt like it mattered. When he dared a glance back, he saw the man's briefcase resting neatly on his lap, and the man's gaze lingering thoughtfully on him. Uncomfortable, Tunde looked away, pretending to study the colorful hand-painted advertisements pasted above the windows. Mama Cammie's Herbs for Strength, and Learn to Drive in 7 days. Still, he could feel the weight of that man's stare, probing, wondering. Maybe I should have just minded my business, Tunde thought, but quickly scolded himself. The world was already too harsh. A little goodness never hurt anyone. As the bus jerked to a stop outside his school, Tunde slipped into the river of students spilling onto the dusty sidewalk. The stranger remained seated, his unreadable gaze following Tunde until he disappeared. For a moment, Tunde felt a chill, but the tide of daily life swept him along. Noisy corridors, shouts of friends, teachers' warnings about upcoming exams. By lunchtime, the encounter had faded to the back of his mind. Geometry formulas and worries about his after-school job filled the space where the stranger's face had been. After school, Tunde hurried to the grocery shack, stacking plantains and folding sacks of cassava flour for hours. The sun dipped low as he finally trudged home, his muscles aching. Life moved on, ordinary and uneventful, until the next morning. Tunde rubbed the sleep from his eyes and stepped onto the cracked porch, adjusting the frayed strap of his bag. His breath caught in his throat. Across the narrow street, a black SUV gleamed in the weak morning sun. Its tinted windows stared at him like dark eyes. The engine purred quietly, steady and patient. Tunde frowned. In Cambole, the cars were old, their bodies scratched by years of potholes and crowded markets. This SUV looked like it belonged in the governor's convoy. He glanced around. No one seemed to notice. Maybe someone was visiting. A lost driver. But unease gnawed at him. His father's warnings echoed. When the river flows backward, watch your step. Making a mental note to stay cautious, Tunde walked briskly to the bus stop. Every few steps, he risked glances back at the silent, predatory vehicle. The bus arrived and Tunde climbed aboard, casting one last look at the SUV. It hadn't moved. Later that day, after surviving a grueling algebra test, Tunde returned home, exhausted. As he rounded the corner to his street, his stomach twisted. The black SUV was now parked directly in front of their humble compound. Heart-hammering, Tunde slowed his steps. The windows remained impenetrable, betraying nothing. He hesitated at the gate, tempted to confront whoever sat inside, but a deep-rooted instinct, the kind passed down by grandmothers and hunters alike, held him back. Inside, his mother sat, rigidly on the threadbare sofa, worry written all over her face. "Tunde, that vehicle!" she whispered, voice trembling. "It came an hour ago. It hasn't moved. No one knocked. No door opened." She confessed she'd nearly called the town chief, but Tunde's father urged patience. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was a mistake. The house felt tight with fear, like a drum stretched too thin. Tunde swallowed hard. His mind raced back to the man in the fine agbada, the heavy briefcase, the lingering stare. Had his simple act of kindness led to this? In his small bedroom, Tunde tried focusing on homework, but every few minutes his eyes darted to the cracked window. From there he could glimpse the SUV, still and silent, like a crouching beast. Music from his radio filled the room, but it couldn't drown out the tension clawing at him. That night dinner passed in near silence. His mother poked at her food. His father chewed slowly, deep in thought. Breaking the heavy air, his mother asked quietly, "Did anything strange happen at school, son?" Tunde shook his head. "Any trouble? Anyone following you?" "No, Mama," he said firmly. Then she mentioned something odd. A neighbor had seen Tunde offering his seat to a stranger in rich clothes on the bus. Tunde nodded, admitting it was true. His father raised an eyebrow but said nothing. They finished their meal in uneasy silence. Later that night, when Tunde peeked out the window one more time, he found the SUV gone. Relief crashed over him, loosening his tense shoulders. Maybe it's over, he thought, sinking into his thin mattress. But when? Morning came, and the weak light of dawn filtered through the thin curtains. Tunde's heart sank. The black SUV was back, and this time his father decided to act. Without a word, Papa strode outside. Tunde followed, heart hammering in his chest. Papa knocked firmly on the driver's window. No response. He knocked again, louder this time. Finally, with a soft mechanical whir, the window slid down a crack. Inside sat an older man, his skin weathered like old leather, his uniform crisp and black. His face revealed nothing. In a steady voice, Papa asked, "Is there a problem here?" The driver said nothing at first. Then, without a word, he extended a business card through the gap. Tunde moved closer, his palms sweating. He dared a glance at the card. Gold letters gleamed against heavy paper. Amobi Kalu Estate Office, Imbeko Heights. No phone number. No explanation. Only an instruction to appear after school. Tunde's father tried to question the man further, but the window slid shut with a soft click. Tunde's mind raced. Why him? Why now? With a sick feeling in his gut, he clutched the card tightly, knowing that today would not be ordinary. He barely heard his father's warnings to be careful. He barely felt the bus rattling under him as he rode to school. All Tunde could think about was the black SUV and the strange card burning a hole in his pocket. Why would someone so powerful seek him out? Why bring their quiet presence to his doorstep? Reaching Bamuso High, Tunde tucked the card carefully into the folds of his old leather wallet. A rebellious part of him wanted to tear it into pieces, toss it into the nearest drain, and pretend none of this had happened. But curiosity gripped him tighter, and duty. If this was connected to his family's safety, he had to find out the truth. Every time his cheap phone buzzed against his thigh, Tunde flinched, half expecting a call from the unknown driver, or worse. But no calls came, no messages, only the heavy silence of waiting. The day slipped past, like a dream he couldn't wake from. Teachers droned, classmates laughed, and Tunde drifted through it all like a ghost. When the final bell rang, he lingered at his dented locker, thumbing the card's thick edges. The address wasn't far, near the shining business district where men in polished shoes and silk ties hustled under giant glass towers. Tunde had only passed there once, wide-eyed on a school trip. Was it the same man from the bus? The stranger who hadn't even given his name? Or was it someone even higher up? Tunde's stomach twisted as he pieced together wild guesses. Maybe it was a scholarship opportunity, maybe a mentorship, or maybe something darker. Despite the sour pit in his belly, Tunde's curiosity was a fire he couldn't put out. He shot a quick text to his mother. Need to handle something. We'll keep you updated. Love you. Her worried replies flooded in within seconds, but he reassured her quickly, not daring to tell her the depth of his unease. Shouldering his bag tighter, he caught the bus heading toward the city's gleaming heart. Though, scenery changed with every mile. The tired paint and broken sidewalks of Kamboli faded, replaced by clean, bustling streets. Here, the air smelled of roasted coffee and new leather instead of fried yams and dust. Tunde's sneakers squeaked awkwardly as he stepped into a sleek building crowned with mirrors and stone. A doorman in a starched white tunic held the door, open silently. Inside, marble floors stretched out like a river of ice. A tall receptionist behind a gleaming desk greeted him without warmth. Tunde, feeling painfully underdressed in his faded jeans and school shirt, held out the card. The woman's eyes scanned it, her face shifting into polite neutrality. She nodded once and pointed him to an elevator. 18th floor. The elevator's cold, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Tunde's reflection stared back at him in the polished doors, small, out of place, and trembling. With a soft ding, the doors parted. He stepped out into a corridor that smelled of varnish and new beginnings. At the hallway's end, heavy wooden doors waited, a brass plaque glinting Amobi Kalu. Executive office. Tunde swallowed. His throat felt scraped raw. Before he could summon the courage to knock, the doors swung open. A woman in a smart skirt and blouse smiled mechanically, ushering him inside. The office stretched out like a palace. Wall-to-wall windows revealed the glittering city below. Behind an enormous ebony desk sat a man with peppered hair, his Agbada suit cut sharp and perfect. His eyes were calm, unreadable. "Welcome, Tunde," the man said in a voice as smooth as river stones. "I am Amobi Kalu." Tunde's palms dampened instantly. Kalu thanked him for coming, explaining with casual ease that he had sent his driver to deliver the invitation personally. "These matters," Kalu said, his voice laced with subtle power, "deserve a personal touch." It felt rehearsed, yet natural. Tunde, heart pounding, pressed for answers. Why him? What did they want? Kalu smiled thinly and gestured toward a chair. He spoke of one of his associates who had witnessed Tunde's small act on the bus, the kindness of offering a seat to a stranger. Such qualities, Kalu insisted, were rare and precious. More valuable, he said, steepling his fingers, than any diploma or test score. Tunde listened, caught between awe and suspicion. Kalu leaned closer, lowering his voice. He ran a private foundation, he explained. A foundation that sought out promising youths from overlooked places. Not just good grades, but good hearts. He offered Tunde a scholarship, full tuition to Mbeko Academy, the best private school in the city, plus mentorship, college preparation. Even internships. Tunde's mind spun. It sounded like a dream wrapped in gold and tied with a ribbon, but something about the effortless way Kalu spoke of help made the hairs on Tunde's neck rise. When asked how he knew so much about Tunde, Kalu's reply was vague. Word travels quickly through good circles. The implication was clear. They'd been watching. The SUV, the long stairs, the silence. The room felt suddenly colder. Still, the offer glowed like a lantern in the dark. Tund thought of his parents, struggling with bills, of how he always dreamed, of university, but feared he'd never afford it. Opportunity didn't knock twice. Choking back his fear, Tunde asked for time to discuss with his family. Kalu smiled knowingly, as if he had expected no less. He handed Tunde a sleek black portfolio, heavy with crisp papers, details about the school, the scholarship's conditions, and what would be expected of him. Kalu rose, offering a firm handshake. Tunde felt the man's grip measuring him, weighing him like a merchant assessing goods. "I hope you make the right decision," Kalu said, his tone balancing perfectly between encouragement and warning. Tunde murmured polite thanks and backed out, heart racing. Inside the elevator, he thumbed through the folder. It was real, astonishing, full tuition, connections, a golden road paved before him. At ground level, the city's roar greeted him. Life felt sharp and dangerous after the cold sterility upstairs. Clutching the folder to his chest, Tunde boarded. The bus back home, staring out at the neighborhood sliding by, old playgrounds, dusty markets, the walls scarred with graffiti. Could one meeting really change his family's destiny? Back in their cramped kitchen, Tunde laid the folder on the table. His mother's hands shook as she leafed through it. Pride and fear warred in her eyes. His father frowned deeply, arms crossed. "Read every word," Papa said. "Nothing from rich men comes free." So they did. Line by line, there were conditions, monthly appearances at Kalu's charity events, a minimum grade requirement, volunteer hours, nothing unreasonable. And yet, that night, lying awake in his narrow bed, Tunde couldn't shake the image of the man's cool gaze, the silence of the SUV, the invisible strings he felt already tightening around him. Still, the chance was dazzling, a ticket out of struggle. He thought of his mother's worn shoes, his father's bent back. How could he walk away? He rolled over. Staring at the cracked ceiling, the folder clutched tight against his chest. Somewhere deep inside, he knew. This was only the beginning. Sleep evaded Tunde as questions spun through his mind like leaves in a storm. Was he missing something? Yet the chance to walk through the towering gates of Mbeko Academy, to step closer to his dream of attending university, filled him with a restless excitement. Lying in bed, Tunde scrolled through the Academy's glossy website. Pictures of grand halls, science labs that looked like they belonged in movies, teachers with glowing accolades. He imagined himself sitting at wide oak desks, learning from brilliant minds, even if most students there wouldn't look like him. Even if they would carry the air of privilege he had never known. The days that followed were an emotional battleground. Doubt gnawed at him on one side. Hope pulled on the other. Word spread quickly at Bamuso High. Whispers floated through the hallways like smoke. Some classmates asked shyly if he was leaving. Some watched him with open envy. Others muttered doubts behind his back, wondering aloud if he was being set up or if the rich folks only wanted to parade him around as a trophy. One friend warned darkly, "Rich people don't give without taking." "Remember that!" Another clapped him on the back, grinning ear to ear, and urged him to run toward the opportunity without looking back. Tunde absorbed it all, his heart heavy with their words. Meanwhile, the black SUV continued its ghostly watch. Some mornings it idled a block away, its windows as dark and silent as ever. Sometimes it was gone, but the feeling remained. He was being observed, measured. Finally, after sleepless nights and long whispered talks with his parents over cups of hot maize porridge, Tunda made his choice. He signed the papers. Promised to meet the conditions of the foundation, and mailed them away, feeling as if he had thrown a stone into a deep, unknown river. The next morning, an email buzzed into his inbox, a welcome from one of Amobi Kalu's assistants. A representative would contact him soon with next steps. A strange cocktail of excitement and dread stirred inside him. Days passed. The SUV stopped appearing. Tunde guessed they no longer needed to watch. He was theirs now. Soon after, calls came from Mbeko Academy's administrative office. Schedules, meetings, a campus tour. He walked the familiar corridors of Bamuso High with quiet dignity during his final days. Some teachers congratulated him, warmly, saying they'd always seen something special in him. Others watched him leave with thin smiles, suspicion flickering in their eyes. Tunda packed up his worn textbooks and said careful goodbyes to a few friends who mattered. The rest he let slip away like water through open fingers. Moving day came too soon. Tunde, carrying a single battered suitcase and his faithful backpack, arrived at Mbeko Academy with his parents. Their worn clothes and quiet awe contrasted starkly with the manicured lawns and marble fountains that lined the vast campus. The scholarship dormitory was a plain brick building tucked behind the glittering main halls. Modest, but clean. A small room with a bed, a desk, and a narrow closet. As they unpacked, his mother squeezed his hand tight. "Call us every day no matter what," she said, her voice thick with tears. His father clapped him on the back, harder than usual. "Stay sharp, son, and remember who you are." Tunde promised them he would. After they left, he stood alone in the tiny room. The walls smelled faintly of fresh paint. The bed creaked when he sat on it. This was a new beginning. Orientation. The next morning felt like stepping into another world. In the grand auditorium, Tunde sat stiffly among a sea of students who laughed easily, flashing expensive watches and talking about vacations to far-off places, beaches and ski resorts. Tunde had only ever seen on television. He felt his difference like a heavy cloak draped over his shoulders. An administrator in a sharp suit welcomed them all, speaking proudly of Mbeko Academy's values: excellence, leadership, community service. Tunde listened, wondering if any of these students had ever given up their seat on a battered bus because they saw someone stumble. He collected his schedule and a shiny campus map, the paper trembling slightly in his hands. The corridors gleamed. The lockers were spotless. A few students gave him tight, polite smiles. Others glanced past him like he was part of the scenery. Among the hundreds, he counted only 2, maybe 3 faces that looked like his. A hollow ache formed in his chest. But he pressed forward. In homeroom, the teacher, neat hair, crisp shirt, stumbled awkwardly over Tunde's name before quickly covering it with a strained smile. Tunde swallowed his frustration and took a seat in the middle of the room. He reminded himself again and again he was here for a reason. But as classes began, he realized how much catching up he had to do. Lessons moved at a dizzying pace. Students around him answered questions easily, referencing books Tunde had never even seen. He learned quickly that private tutors were common here, after-school programs were expected, and falling behind wasn't an option. At lunch, he wandered awkwardly through the gleaming cafeteria. The food was fancy: herbed chicken, quinoa salads. Tunde missed the greasy jollof rice and fried plantains of Bamuso High. He picked a quiet corner by the window, poking half-heartedly at his plate. A boy in a varsity jacket glanced at him, dismissed him with a shrug, and moved on. From nearby tables, Tunde overheard talk about the upcoming debate club auditions. His ears perked up. Maybe he could find his footing there, where words, not wealth, mattered. Weeks turned into months. Tunde kept his head low and worked harder than he ever had in his life. He exchanged polite greetings with classmates, but real friendships were slow to grow. Every so often, he felt the sting of something he couldn't quite name. A teacher questioning him more sharply, a student's offhand remark about scholarship kids needing extra help. Each insult cut deep, but Tunde held his tongue. He hadn't come here to fight. He came to build a bridge to his dreams. In the background, life at the foundation quietly hummed. Once a month, the scholarship students, just 5 of them, gathered downtown at Amobi Kalu's polished offices. The meetings were filled with motivational speeches, tips about handling academic pressure. Kalu himself rarely appeared. When he did, he offered brief, gleaming words about perseverance and gratitude before disappearing into other meetings with important men in suits. Tunde watched him from a distance, feeling a gnawing unease he couldn't shake. It was at one of these sessions that Tunde met Tari. She was sharp-witted, quick to laugh, and unafraid to call out the unfairness she saw. She played violin like an angel and carried herself with the weary pride of someone who knew what it meant to fight for every inch. Over rushed lunches and shared library tables, a friendship grew. Between them, Tari joked that survival here was a team sport. One afternoon in the library, as golden light slanted across dusty shelves, she asked Tunde how he had crossed paths with Amobi Kalu. Tunde told her everything: the bus ride, the offered seat, the silent SUV. She listened, eyebrows raised high. "Sounds like a fairy tale," she said, "but even fairy tales have monsters hiding in plain sight." Her words planted a seed in Tunde's mind. That night, alone in his room, he opened his battered laptop. Curiosity gnawed at him. He typed Amobi Kalu Foundation into the search bar. On the surface, Amobi Kalu appeared to be a saint. The glossy articles praised him endlessly: builder of libraries, founder of art centers, champion of economic growth in struggling neighborhoods. Pictures showed him smiling beside celebrities, shaking hands with politicians, raising glasses at glittering galas. To the public, he was a bridge between rich and poor, black and white. Yet the perfection of it all gnawed at Tunde. Every article gleamed like polished brass. Not a single word of criticism, no hint of scandal. For a man with so much wealth and influence, it felt unnatural. Determined, Tunde dug deeper, slipping beyond the polished headlines into lesser-known corners of the internet. Whispers floated through obscure blogs and forgotten social media posts. Rumors that Kalu had cozy ties to powerful officials. Hints that he invested in businesses that quietly squeezed life from the very neighborhoods he claimed to save. No solid proof, only smoke, but Tunde's instincts, honed in the rough edges, of Kambole told him, "Where there's smoke, there is often fire." He tried to brush it off. After all, he hadn't seen anything directly, and he needed this scholarship, needed it desperately. Weeks turned into a rhythm of study and survival. Tunde buried himself in textbooks, his grades climbing. Some teachers softened, impressed by his persistence. Others remained stiff, their doubt lingering like a bad smell. He fulfilled his obligations too, attending the foundation's volunteer drives, handing out food baskets and school supplies in neighborhoods that felt like mirror images of his own. These moments felt real. He saw gratitude in the eyes of mothers, hope in the faces of children. Yet even there, shadows lingered. One evening at a community event, Tunde spotted a figure standing apart from the crowd, an older man, cap pulled low. His heart skipped. It was him, the stranger from the bus. Driven by a storm of questions, Tunda tried to approach, but the man slipped away into a dark car, its windows black as secrets. Back at the dorm, he told Tari everything. She shrugged, half joking. Maybe they're just checking to see if you're still their perfect poster boy. But the tightness in Tunda's stomach said otherwise. Why watch him from the shadows if everything was as clean as they claimed? At the next foundation meeting, he casually asked one of the assistants about the mysterious observer. Her smile was too smooth. "Oh, many of Mr. Kalu's associates volunteer at events," she said lightly. Tunde didn't believe her. He dropped it. For now. A few nights later, while heading to a late study session, he spotted the black SUV again. Parked near the academy gates. Engine humming. No one stepped out. No one approached. Tunda's skin crawled. He stood for a long moment, fists clenched, then turned away. Exams were coming. He couldn't afford distractions. Still, fear stalked his steps. He kept his grades up, kept his head down, but friendship remained a distant thing. Prejudice buzzed like a low drone around him. One day, a group of boys cornered him in the hallway, laughing cruelly. "Hey, charity case," one sneered. "How's your private SUV treating you?" The words, dripping with mockery and hate, burned hotter than any slap. Tunda's fists itched. He wanted to lash out. Hard. But he remembered his father's voice. "Stay cool. Never let them drag you down." He walked away, jaw tight, leaving their laughter behind. But inside, something cracked. That night, sitting on his narrow bed, Tunde wondered if he had traded one prison for another. Was he truly free? Or just a pawn dressed up in better clothes? The answer came late one night. His phone buzzed. His father's number. Tunde answered immediately. His father's voice was tight, filled with barely concealed fear. "Two men in suits came by," he said. "Said they were from the foundation, asking about you, where you spend your time, who you talk to, what you plan for your future." Tunde's stomach dropped. He reassured his father he wasn't in trouble, that he hadn't done anything wrong. His father believed him, but worry lingered in every word. When the call ended, Tunde sat frozen, anger and fear battling inside him. Why would Amobi Kalu's people send investigators to his family's door? Was this normal? He needed real answers. He called the foundation office the next morning, voice steady despite the rage boiling underneath. The assistant on the line apologized smoothly. "Routine check-ins," she said. "We like to ensure our scholarship recipients have stable support systems." When Tunde pressed for more, she dodged with practiced ease. Every word felt like syrup poured over broken glass. Tunde realized something chilling. This wasn't just charity. This was surveillance. And if he pushed too hard, everything he had fought for could vanish. That night, he met with Tari under the cover of darkness, in a quiet corner of the library. He poured out the story. The men in suits, the car that never left, the feeling of invisible chains tightening around him. Tari listened, her brow furrowing deeper with every word. "We have to find out the truth," she said firmly, "from the inside." Tunde hesitated. Going against Amobi Kalu was dangerous, but doing nothing felt even worse. He nodded slowly. They would be careful. They would be smart, but they would not stay blind. At the next foundation meeting, Tunde and Tari slipped into the conference room early. Amobi Kalu was absent, as usual. A row of administrators led the discussions. Upcoming volunteer drives, new internship placements. Their smiles were bright, their suits sharper than razors. Tunde scanned their faces, searching for cracks in the perfect facade. Nothing obvious. Near the end, the coordinator made an announcement. "In 2 weeks, we will celebrate our successes with a special gala," he said, beaming. "A dinner at Mr. Kalu's private estate. Every scholarship student was required to attend." Tunde's blood ran cold. This gala could be their chance to see behind the curtain, to find the truth. He caught Tari's eye across the room. Silent understanding passed between them. It was time to dig deeper. In the days leading up to the event, they played a careful game. They kept their grades up, smiled when expected, moved through classes like shadows, gathering tiny scraps of information. Tari dug through library archives. Tunde spoke cautiously to older teachers. What they found was too clean. Every mention of the foundation was polished to a shine. Success, stories, glowing statistics, grand promises, nothing about financials, nothing about real operations. It was a mask. A glittering mask. The night of the gala arrived. Tunde stood before his tiny dorm mirror, adjusting the borrowed blazer he could barely afford. His hands shook slightly. This night could change everything, for better or for worse. Tari met Tunde at the entrance of Bamuso High, her simple dress flowing like a river under the soft campus lights. Determination and fear clung to them both. A sleek town car, gleaming like obsidian, awaited. Arranged by the foundation, it whisked them and a few other scholarship students away. The ride was silent. Outside, the city lights blurred into long streaks, giving way to dark winding roads lined with tall iron gates and palatial homes. Finally, they arrived. An enormous estate loomed before them, 3 stories tall, lanterns casting a golden glow across trimmed gardens. Tunde's heart thundered as they stepped out. Massive wooden doors creaked open, revealing a foyer so grand it stole his breath. Staff, dressed in crisp uniforms, guided them to a vast ballroom dripping with chandeliers and velvet curtains. Laughter and the clink of crystal glasses floated through the air. Elegant guests, rich and powerful, mingled as though hardship had never touched them. Tunde and the other scholarship students were led to a small designated area near the grand podium. He felt it immediately. The invisible wall between them and us. The crowd's easy smiles and polished confidence spoke of generations of privilege. And then, Tunde saw him, Amobi Kalu, standing like a king among dignitaries and politicians, his salt and pepper hair gleaming under the chandeliers. When Kalu spotted Tunde, his smile shifted from formal to warm. He excused himself and crossed the ballroom. Tunde's stomach twisted. Kalu shook hands with each student, saving Tunde for last. "Tunde," he said, his voice filled with knowing familiarity. Tunde nodded stiffly, feeling like he was under a microscope. Kalu asked about school, volunteer work, studies. Tunde answered politely, hiding his growing mistrust. Meanwhile, Tari slipped away, blending into the crowd, eyes sharp. "Walk with me," Kalu said, resting a hand lightly on Tunde's shoulder. Tunde's legs felt heavy, but he obeyed. Kalu made small talk, praising Tunde's dedication. Tunde nodded, waiting, searching for the right moment. When they reached a quieter corner, he spoke, voice steady. "My parents," he said. "They received an unexpected visit from Foundation people." Kalu's smile froze for a heartbeat. His fingers adjusted his cufflinks. "Routine background checks," he said smoothly. "Necessary when large sums and reputations are involved." Tunde pressed, mentioning how intrusive the visit was. Kalu's eyes hardened ever so slightly. "Some steps are unpleasant," he said, "but essential." The conversation ended there. Before Tunde could push further, Kalu was called away by a cluster of politicians. Tunde stood alone, fists clenching and unclenching. He realized Kalu was used to being obeyed. Tari reappeared, her face grave. She whispered that she overheard a senator congratulating Kalu on securing a done deal, a development project in Kambole, Tunde's old neighborhood. The blood drained from Tunde's face. They split up, weaving through the glittering crowd, pretending to mingle. Tunde listened carefully. Guests boasted about zoning permits, revitalization plans, future profits. One man joked that with the goodwill from the scholarship program, even the media will cheer for us. Tunde's stomach nodded. They were using students like him as shields, symbols of their fake compassion. Dinner was announced. Long tables dressed in white linen groaned under platters of food. Tunde and the other scholarship kids were seated front and center, trophies on display. The food was exquisite, yet each bite turned to ash in his mouth. He thought of families back home who struggled for a single decent meal. Wine glasses clinked. Then, Kalu rose to speak. He praised the foundation's work, thanked donors, celebrated the students. Cameras flashed. Applause thundered. Tunde's mind raced. How could this man, hailed as a savior, be the same one scheming to displace entire communities? After the speeches, guests mingled again. Tunde and Tari huddled near a marble statue. Her face was tight with anger. She'd overheard two corporate executives discussing how Kalu's influence smoothed government approvals. Tunde's heart sank. Deeper. The pieces fit too well now. The scholarships, the polished PR, the secret deals. His joy at winning a better future had become a heavy chain. Their success stories were not a beacon. They were camouflage. Tunde clenched his fists. A wave of despair and rage crashing through him. He had to protect his family, his community. But how? Going against Amobi Kalu could cost him everything. His scholarship, his education, even his parents' safety. The ride back to Bamuso High was suffocating. Neither he nor Tari spoke. The weight of truth pressed too hard. That night, lying awake, in his narrow dorm bed, Tunde wrestled with his choices. He thought about that bus ride, the simple kindness that had started it all. Could a small act truly ripple so far, so darkly? In the deep hours of night, he made a vow. No matter the cost, he would not be a pawn in this corruption. He would find a way to expose Amobi Kalu, for his parents, for his neighbors, for himself. The next morning, a text from his mother jolted him. "Everything's fine," she wrote. "But neighbors are worried. New developers sending letters, taxes going up." Tunde's heart pounded. It was happening. He replied carefully, hiding his alarm. In class, he barely heard the lectures. Anxiety coiled inside him. He considered confronting Kalu directly, but it would be reckless without proof. He thought of telling the school administration. But if they were in Kalu's pocket, it would backfire. Tari leaned in and whispered, urgently, "We need someone who can dig deeper. A journalist or a community activist?" Tunde nodded, his mind already racing. Maybe that was the safest way, to reveal the truth without placing a bigger target on their backs. He couldn't shake the memory of the stern-faced men who had knocked on his family's door. The constant, watchful presence of that black SUV. Going against Amobi Kalu would not be without consequences. But Tunde had made his decision. A new foundation meeting was only days away. He and Tari agreed. They would use the opportunity to dig deeper. Maybe the office held documents, contracts, proof. If they could slip away while others were distracted, they might find what they needed to expose the truth. In the days leading up to the meeting, Tunde walked through Bamuso High feeling the heavy pull of fear. Some teachers acted strangely, distant or overly polite, like they knew something was wrong. Rumors floated in whispers. "They didn't clap at the gala," someone muttered. "They looked uncomfortable." Paranoia gnawed at Tunde's mind. It felt like invisible eyes were always watching. Still, he pressed on. When the day arrived, he and Tari showed up early at Kalu's sleek downtown office. They wore simple clothes, trying to blend in. At the front desk, Tari smiled sweetly and claimed they needed to fill out extra volunteer paperwork. The receptionist barely looked up from her phone and waved them through. They slipped down the polished hallway. Past the familiar conference room, there it was, a door marked Authorized Personnel Only. Tunde's heart hammered. He reached for the handle, locked. A keypad blinked red beside it. Curses, he muttered under his breath. Just then, they heard footsteps. Thus, tall, slender woman who often shadowed Kalu approached, heels clicking like a warning drum. "You're early," she said pleasantly, but her sharp eyes flicked toward the locked door. Thinking fast, Tunde smiled. "We came to discuss next month's volunteer schedule." A brief pause. Her smile tightened. "Wait in the conference room," she instructed. They had no choice. Tunde's heart pounded like a trapped bird as they followed her. The meeting started. Administrators praised new initiatives, listed volunteer activities, celebrated scholarship students' progress. Tunde barely heard a word. His gaze kept drifting to the sleek, polished door across the hallway. Finally, Amobi Kalu swept into the room, late as usual. He delivered a short, stirring speech about resilience and opportunity. Tunde watched him carefully, thinking of the gala, the whispered deals, the developers circling his old neighborhood. After the meeting, as the room emptied, Tunde and Tari hung back. Tunde approached Kalu directly. "Sir," he said, trying to keep his voice calm, "have you heard about property taxes rising in Camberley? Residents getting letters from developers?" Kalu looked up from his phone, his eyes flashing a brief, sharp annoyance. "I've heard rumors," he said smoothly. "But I'm not directly involved," Tunde pressed. "With your influence, maybe you could stop it." Kalu offered a vague, dismissive smile. "Progress is inevitable," he said. "Economic growth sometimes requires difficult changes." Tunde's fists tightened at his sides. He pushed once more, asking for something concrete. Kalu's face cooled. "You have been given a rare opportunity," he said. "Focus on your future. Don't concern yourself with what you cannot change." It wasn't a threat. Not exactly. But the message was clear. Stay silent or lose everything. Tari tried to speak, but Kalu silenced her with a crisp smile. "There are others," he said, "who would be grateful." He turned and walked away, leaving Tunde and Tari standing frozen, anger and fear coiling in their chests. They knew then. The direct approach was too dangerous. They would have to be smarter. That night, Tunde reached out to an old friend from Camberley, someone active in community organizing. In cautious, coded words, he explained that a powerful corporation might be behind the wave of rising taxes and eviction threats. The friend confirmed that rumors were already spreading. Promises of jobs and prosperity were masking something uglier, a plan to drive out longtime residents. "Get proof," his friend urged. "Documents, records, anything." Tunde knew exactly where to look. That locked door. The thought became his anchor. Days blurred by. School, study sessions, sleepless nights. Fear was a constant hum in the back of his mind. One afternoon, the black SUV returned. This time, Tunde didn't hesitate. He marched up to the driver's side window and tapped. The window slid down a crack. Inside sat the same, older man, his face expressionless. Without a word, he handed Tunde a new business card. This one was blank, except for a single phone number. Before Tunde could speak, the window slid up and the SUV rolled away. His hands shook as he showed the card to Tari. She urged caution. "It could be help," she said. "Or it could be a trap." Tunde tucked the card into his pocket. He would decide later. Then came a break. An email from the Foundation's staff announced a new daytime orientation for volunteers. It would include a tour of the different departments, a perfect chance. Tunde and Tari planned carefully, If they could slip away during the tour, they might finally uncover the truth hiding behind that locked door. The risk was high, but so was the cost of silence. They were ready. They had to be. Dressed in plain, simple clothes, Tunde arrived at the foundation building, his heart pounding, inside his chest like a warning drum. A cheerful staffer greeted the group of new volunteers and began leading them through the gleaming halls, explaining the roles of each department. As they moved, Tunde spotted the door again, the one labeled Authorized Access Only. His pulse quickened. While the staffer was busy answering a flood of questions from others, Tunde lingered near a wall plaque, pretending to study it. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a critical moment. A staffer approaching the keypad. Beside the door, 4 quick taps. 4719. The door beeped and swung open. Tunde memorized the code instantly. He waited, feigning casual interest, until the group moved further down the corridor. Then, when the hallway emptied, he darted to the door. His palms sweated as he punched in the code. Beep, green light. The lock clicked. Tunde slipped inside, pulling the door quietly shut behind him. The office was dim and cold, lined with towering filing cabinets and several unattended computer stations. The faint scent of fresh paper and printer ink filled the air. He tiptoed across the carpet, scanning labels on the cabinets, dates, district names, project codes. One label jumped out at him, a code tied to his old neighborhood. Heart racing, he tugged open the drawer. Inside were thick folders bulging with property deeds, zoning documents, and legal contracts. Tunde rifled through them quickly. Every page painted a damning picture. Parcels of land bought for cheap, plans for rezoning, outlines for demolitions masked as urban renewal. At the top of every document was a name he recognized. Amobi Holdings, Kalu's company, his. Breath caught in his throat. Construction was scheduled to start within months. Terms like eminent domain and community displacement leapt out at him. The supposed public interest was just a cover for greed. More horrifying still, a separate memo detailed how youth scholarship success stories would be paraded to soften community outrage, weaponizing people like him and Tari as living proof of Blackwell's supposed generosity. Tunde felt a surge of nausea. Suddenly, voices floated in from the hallway. Panic flooded him. He shoved as many documents as he could into his backpack, carefully closing the drawer. The doorknob jiggled. Tunde pressed himself flat against the wall behind a filing cabinet as the door cracked open. A staffer stepped inside, flipping on the light, thumbing through another file. Tunde held his breath, frozen. After a few agonizing minutes, the staffer left, leaving the light on. Tunde didn't waste a second. He peeked through the door. Empty hallway. He slipped out silently, easing the door closed behind him. Quickly, he rejoined the orientation group still gathered nearby. He pasted a casual smile on his face and nodded politely at the ongoing explanation about volunteer responsibilities. Inside, he was trembling with adrenaline. Later that evening, Tunde and Tari met in a quiet corner of a small public library. They spread out the stolen documents across a table. Their worst fears were confirmed. Blackwell's company was systematically seizing property, using political muscle to fast-track projects, evict families, and transform neighborhoods into luxury developments. The so-called community support initiatives were little more than window dressing to make the exploitation look noble. One document in particular made Tunde's blood boil. It outlined how the scholarship program was strategically used to build, trust, and manage public sentiment during controversial redevelopment efforts. They were pawns in a game they never chose. Tari's face darkened as she read. "This is it," she whispered. "This is the proof." But danger hovered close. Blackwell's influence ran deep. If he realized what they had, he wouldn't hesitate to crush them. Tunde weighed the risks. He thought of the SUV that had shadowed him, The paia, strange men who questioned his father. The warnings wrapped inside polite smiles. Going to the authorities was risky. What if Blackwell had people in the police or local government? They needed a plan. Fast. That night, Tunde hid the documents under his dorm bed, tucked away in a locked trunk wrapped in plain folders. He lay awake, haunted by the faces of his neighbors, by the memories of children playing on cracked sidewalks, memories now threatened by bulldozers and steel towers. The next day, he reached out to his old friend, the community organizer. Over coffee in a small corner cafe, he and Tari laid everything bare, the files, the names, the contracts. Their friend's eyes widened in horror. This could stop them, he said. They quickly agreed. The only way to survive was to spread the truth wide and fast, to multiple community groups, activists, reporters. If too many people had the evidence, Blackwell couldn't erase it. Tari offered to help scan and email everything. The clock was ticking. Later that night, Tunde sat alone in his dorm, scanning pages and pages of contracts. Each keystroke felt like a hammer blow against the machine of corruption. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Cautiously, he answered. A low, familiar voice spoke. "You've been seen." It was the driver from the black SUV, the man who had once handed him the blank card. "You need to know," the voice said. "Blackwell's security is watching. If you go public, they will retaliate." The line went dead. Tunde's hand trembled slightly as he set his phone down on the table. Whether the call had been a warning or a threat, one thing was certain. He had already crossed the line. The truth was out. The wheels were spinning, and there was no way to stop them now. Images of his parents, his neighbors, the familiar streets of Kambole flashed in his mind. He wouldn't, let Amobi Kalu win. The next day felt endless. Every corner of campus felt hostile. Every hallway seemed too quiet. Tunde's eyes darted over his shoulder constantly, half expecting someone from Kalu's security team to appear. By afternoon, his phone rang again. It was his friend from the community center, their voice charged with excitement. "Tunde! The documents are already causing waves. A reporter wants to talk to you." Tunde hesitated. Speaking up could expose him. Kalu had influence everywhere. But silence would mean surrender. Finally, he agreed. Under one condition: anonymity. That evening, Tunde found himself sitting in a worn booth at a dimly lit diner off campus. Across from him, a young reporter scribbled furiously as he laid out the entire story, from the day he offered his seat on the bus to the black SUV to the scholarship that had turned into a chain. Every revelation widened the reporter's eyes. "I'll verify everything carefully," the reporter promised. "Legal experts, document checks, we'll make sure it's airtight." Tunde only nodded, his heart thudding heavily. "Just protect my identity," he said quietly. "If Kalu finds out it was me, he won't stop." When they finally left the diner, Tari walked silently beside him. Her jaw was tight, her steps quick. Across the street, a dark car was parked. Inside, a vague silhouette shifted. Tunde felt a bolt of fear shoot through him, but he didn't stop. He kept walking, his fists clenched, his chin high. He would not run. In the days that followed, tension stretched so tightly across campus it felt like it might snap. Tunde kept his head down, pretending to focus on lectures, ignoring the curious glances from classmates. Tari did the same. Late one night, another call came from the community organizer. "The reporter's publishing tomorrow morning," they said. Tunde couldn't sleep that night. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything about to break loose. At dawn, it happened. The story hit the front pages, and the city caught fire. Headlines screamed across social media and news channels. Philanthropist Amobi Kalu exposed in secret land grab. Scholarship program, a cover for corrupt land deals. Low-income families targeted for displacement. The documents Tunde had risked everything to reveal were authenticated by experts. The facts were undeniable. Although Tunde's name was protected, the article spoke of an insider, someone who had risked their future to uncover the truth. Protests erupted across the city. Community leaders demanded investigations. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves from Kalu, issuing hollow apologies. The once invincible image of Amobi Kalu was crumbling, fast. In the middle of the chaos, a terse email arrived from the school administration. Tunde's stomach dropped. They were summoning him to the principal's office. Fear pulsed through him, but he forced himself to move calmly. When he entered, he found the principal sitting stiffly at her desk, two sharp-suited men from Kalu's foundation standing nearby. The principal's expression was tight, her voice grave. "Mr. Tunde," she said slowly, "you are being accused of illegally accessing confidential information and breaching the terms of your scholarship." The words landed like punches, but Tunde stayed rooted. The principal's voice was tight with tension. "The school must launch a formal investigation," she said, avoiding Tunde's gaze. "If the allegations against you hold any truth, your scholarship may be revoked." Tunde felt ice run through his veins, but deep within, a flame of defiance sparked. He straightened his back, forcing calm into his voice. "I'm advised not to discuss details," he said, each word measured. One of the suited men smirked coldly. "Effective. Immediately, your scholarship is suspended, pending further review." The principal's face was a mix of regret and helplessness. "My hands are tied," she whispered. They gave him a tight deadline to vacate the dormitory. The weight of the moment crashed down on him. His dream of studying at this prestigious institution, over. He packed his few belongings into a worn backpack. Tari stood by his side, her jaw clenched in silent outrage. Tears threatened to spill from Tunde's eyes, but he refused to let them fall. A security guard shadowed him down the dormitory hallway, making sure he left without a scene. Students watched from their doorways, faces frozen in shock. Some looked sympathetic. None spoke. He walked past them, head high, remembering the day he had first arrived, bursting with hope. Now he was leaving under a cloud of accusation and scandal. But deep inside, a new steel formed. He had done the right thing. When he reached home, his parents pulled him into their arms. Their faces showed fear for his future, but also pride. "You stood for what was right," his father said gruffly, patting his back. "No piece of paper is worth selling out our people," his mother whispered fiercely. Tunde promised them he would find another way. They would face this together, as a family. Meanwhile, the city roared. Protests filled the streets. Community leaders demanded justice. Lawyers filed urgent injunctions to stop Amobi Kalu's development plans. Public opinion turned like a tide. The news showed Kalu's once confident face now taut with stress as reporters hurled accusations. He claimed innocence. He blamed misunderstandings. But the documents, authenticated and public, told another story. Kalu was running out of excuses. Tari called often. She said the other scholarship students were torn, confused, frightened. Some feared losing everything. Others finally saw the truth and questioned the foundation's real motives. Tunde's heart ached for them. They hadn't asked to be pawns, but still, the truth had needed to come out. Weeks passed. Legal battles raged in the courts. Tunde focused on his future. He applied to universities, searched for new scholarships. His story of standing up against corruption caught the attention of new schools and organizations. Some admired his courage. New doors, once invisible, now cracked open. One morning, his phone buzzed with a call from a hidden number. It was the older man, the one from the black SUV. Kalu has resigned, the man said quickly. The development project is stalled. Legal action continues. Before Tunda could reply, the call ended. He sat there in stunned silence. Victory, not just for him, but for his family. His community. Though his path had been torn apart, something stronger had risen in its place, a future built on truth. In the months that followed, Tunde worked tirelessly. He took part-time jobs, volunteered with community activists, fought to protect the neighborhoods he loved. Colleges began reaching out, not just because of grades, but because of his integrity. Eventually, he earned admission to a respected public university known for its commitment to social justice. He thrived there, surrounded by students and professors who believed in fighting for what was right. On weekends, he returned home, volunteering, mentoring younger students, helping families fight eviction. He became a symbol in Kambole, proof that one person could make a difference, that courage mattered. He often thought back to that morning at the bus stop, a simple choice, offering his seat. He had never imagined it would lead here, through storms, betrayals, and battles for justice. But it had. That small act had set powerful forces into motion. It had taught him that power could be challenged, that truth could prevail, that success was not measured by wealth or titles, but by the lives you lift up along the way. And so, Tunde's story continued, shaped by fire, but moving forward with strength. And the next time he saw someone standing without a seat, he would offer his again, boldly, unafraid. Because he now knew, the smallest kindness can change the world. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful tales of courage, truth, and hope. Together, we can keep the spirit of justice alive. See you in the next story.